Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this show is Let's Live with Thurman Greco, and it's coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock, New York, and also from Let's Live with Thurman Greco on YouTube. And we have a very interesting set of guests this evening. We have some people who focus their energies towards alleviating domestic violence in this area. And I was very, very excited to be able to schedule them this evening. So I'm going to start off and asking you, Martin, can you just introduce yourselves for a minute?
Certainly, absolutely. My name is Martin Fineberg, and I've been involved with Family of Woodstock for about 45 years. It's a long time. And I've been involved with the EVOLVE program, which is the domestic violence program that Family sponsors and facilitates since about 20 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
That's a long time, and I've done both a men's group and a women's group, and there are some interesting differences between them, which we will get into as we progress.
You know, that's very interesting because Family does so many things, and I've learned about you guys by accident. There was a brochure that fell on the floor. If it hadn't fallen on the floor, I would never have known. I mean, there's just so much. Andrea, would you please tell us who you are and how you operate with EVOLVE?
Well, hello and thank you for having us. My name is Andrea, and I also work at Family of Woodstock for many years. I started working at Family since 2014. I started as a case manager, and just in 2022 I became the program director for the EVOLVE program. But before that, before becoming the program director, I was also running groups. They started the bilingual group. Now it's only Spanish speaker group. So I am one of the facilitators, and yeah, so that's pretty much.
So that's very interesting. You have a group that's Spanish only.
Yes.
And then you have another group that's English only.
We have 8 groups, including the Spanish speaker group. So the other 7 groups are 6 of them are for men, and another group that is allocated for women.
And
only.
where do you guys meet? Is that a secret?
No, it's not a secret. We meet, there's one group that meets in our main office in Kingston. We have 2 groups that are virtual for individuals that are not closer to Kingston. And we have 2 other groups in the Department of Social Services. And our women's group is also virtual. And our Spanish group is in our main office in Kingston. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
And this is the new office in Kingston.
Yes.
This is the beautiful mansion.
Yes.
This is the beautiful mansion.
Yes, the beautiful building we have. We have 2 groups in that office.
And you know what's amazing?
Mm-hmm.
We have this gorgeous family has this gorgeous building in Kingston that's new, and to my mind, I drive by the building and somehow I can't connect. Family is not about that.
Well, we were very fortunate.
I know.
It was a gift. And the building is on Albany Avenue, and it looks like a castle. But we were gifted it by a family that owned the building and made a very generous bequest to Family. And so we are all very fortunate to be in this beautiful, air-conditioned, light, everything that the John Street building wasn't.
You know, it's an interesting thing too, as well. Of course, we don't see Michael Berg very often, but I do remember seeing him somewhere, and he was talking, and he said, now for the first time, we have a place.
Yes, yes. I think we were renting on John Street. It was a building, the building that, family was there for many years, and now this is our home. So it feels nice.
We'll get used to it. We'll get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So how did it evolve? How did it happen?
Well, it happened back in 1982, and it was, it came, I think, because of the domestic violence movement in general, that there was no place for men to be, well, sort of, to make change, to not be who they were, or to not act the way they are used to acting. And it came from women being really angry at men, and I think it was decided, and I think Hillary McKenna and Jay Sadowitz and Terry Antman, who's a local, everybody in Woodstock knows Terry Antman, and they got together with, I'm not sure who, but Michael sponsored it, and I think United Way gave us funds to start it, and that's how it got its start. And it was only for men at that point, and it wasn't until early 2000 that the women's group was formed, because at that point it was recognized that women were also involved in domestic violence, sometimes as perpetrators, sometimes as victims who became perpetrators. And that's sort of one of the differences between the women's group and the men's, is that most of the men come to evolve from courts and probation and parole, and they come from a history of, it's mostly about power and control, which has been the sort of the main issue, that men seem to need to feel they need to be in control. And as you know, in society, we have come from a patriarchal society where men have been in control and women have suffered because of that. And often domestic violence used to be considered private. If it's in your house, it's nobody's business. And that was the attitude that a lot of law enforcement had, as well as the people involved. It's what stays in the homes, what goes on in the home is private. But it became so clear that it was violent and hurtful and painful and hurting the children as well, that there became clearly a need that it had to be dealt with in a much more profound way to make change, so that men could look at their behavior after they got arrested and did things that really were violent, hurtful, dangerous to the children, and they would go to jail. And then it became, we able to get either the courts or the jail system, the probation system, to say, in order to be released from jail, you need to sign up for a course called Evolve. And I'll let Andrea talk a little bit about what the course actually is.
But can I ask this? How much organization went into setting up Evolve?
Well, as Martin mentioned, this started like 40 plus years ago, and I think the name of the program says it all. It has evolved in many years. It started as only for men, and then now it has changed that we even offer virtual groups. So on my end, as a program director that has been just for a few years, what happens is that we receive referrals from either probation, parole, mental health,
And the courts.
the courts, Department of Social Services, CPS, for individuals that have been committed offenses, or they have been charged, or there is, domestic abuse in the household. So that's how we get the referrals. I do the intake with the individual, and then they are placed in a group. Obviously, during the intake, we do a little bit of screening. Not everybody that is sent to us is appropriate for the program. It happens sometimes that they are more the victims or the survivors instead of the perpetrators, but sometimes there is a little, confusion, or the courts think that this is an only anger management program, which is not. This is more, it's larger than just anger management. So that's a little bit of how the logistics goes into how participants get into the program. The history is, is 40-something years old. It's a program that is very well known by certain judicial agencies in Ulster County, and now because we offer virtual sessions, sometimes other agencies also reach out to us. That we all mainly work with Ulster County residents that sometimes, because of the distance, it's somebody that is in Phoenicia or Big Indian,
Well,
things
now,
like that.
so people get referred to Evolve. That's how you get in an Evolve program. You need a referral.
Most of the participants are referrals. We do also take volunteers, people that acknowledge they have a problem.
So is it possible for somebody to call you up and say, I need to be in a program?
Yes, definitely.
What about the victims?
Well, a family, we have domestic violence programs as well. And as I mentioned, sometimes I do the intakes and they are not appropriate for, as we call, perpetrators, and we refer them to other counseling.
So what you're saying is Evolve is for a person who does have experience with violence, domestic violence. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Originally, when this program started, there was a lot of opposition from many women's groups that felt that men shouldn't be worked with. That if someone is violent and has hurt people, they don't deserve the services, and that all the money and resources should go for the rehabilitation and care of women who have been victims of domestic violence.
That's very interesting.
But we felt that in many cases, the women want to be with their abusers because they're abusers, but they're also parents, fathers, and husbands and lovers and whatever, and they have behaviors that are destructive, certainly to their partners and also for the children. But we felt, and we heard a lot of input from people saying, we need a resource that will work with men. Women came later because that wasn't a part of this, was that will work with men who are violent and help them figure out how not to be violent. Because they're going to be back, after they go to jail for 30 days, they wind up going back to their families, and it's dangerous, and nobody is giving them any assistance to how to change their behavior, how to learn new behavior, how to understand where they came from, why they're violent, what's the violence, where does it come from, was there violence in their families growing up, how do they deal with their anger? And most of them don't deal with their anger very well. They express it in physical and mental ways, to mentally abuse to control, physically abuse to control. And so family felt there was a need to work with men to help them make change. And that's what Evolve is. Evolve is about change. And it's a 33-week course. It's not quite a course, but it's a 33-week program that has divided into 2 sections. 16 weeks, you get 3 absences you're allowed. The next 16 weeks, you get another 3 absences. So you wind up spending close to a year involved with other men or women, there's no mixed groups, to figure out where the anger comes from, where the violence comes from, and how to learn that it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to act out on it. And it's not okay to be violent. That violence is never acceptable.
You know, you brought up something that I think is very important. I don't know anything about it, but it seems to me, you talked about the person goes to jail for 30 days, and then they go right back into their community. That happens if it's 30 days or 60 days or 5 years or 15 years. I believe, I don't know. I know that I occasionally speak on the telephone with somebody who has just been released from prison and they need shelter. And you realize they are completely unprepared for this moment, this 24 hours that they're experiencing. And so what they're going to do is they're just going to go back where they came from. Is that correct?
Well, for some people, yes. I mean, we try to, for the example that you mentioned, and again, you know, our family, we offer other programs for people that were just recently released from prison. And, you know, we have just very few staff, very little staff to serve a big community. So in terms of individuals coming out from prison, what we try to do is to connect them with a program that we also run. It's called Re-Entry, and it's basically case management with individuals that were just recently released. Some of those individuals, because they are on parole, are referred to our program, Evolve, because they have domestic violence. So it's a very interesting program, Evolve, because there's many topics that we discuss. And for instance, for myself, as a person that is an immigrant, and where there is many taboos and many things that we don't talk because of the culture, to have a group of men open up, talk about topics like, you know, their own abuse since they were, when they were children, or suicide ideation, or like recognize that what they have done is not the right way of behavior. So it's, you know, it's just a safe space for individuals to really examine their behaviors and just to learn from it. So we're hoping that also our work is in some way preventive, so the domestic violence doesn't continue in the community, to have safer communities for everybody. So.
Do you have any, are you aware of, I guess I have 2 questions. One is, if they've done the 30 some odd weeks, do people take it again? I mean, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous, you meet every day, but I mean, can you meet weekly beyond the 30 weeks? Is that appropriate?
It happens. Some people occasionally, after they finish the 33 weeks, will say, you know, this has been so helpful to me. Can I continue? And so we allow for that. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen that people will sign up. They have to sign up to do an addition, at least another 4 weeks segment. You can't just drop in and then not come, because being there on a regular basis is an integral part of the way the group works. You can't just drop in and don't have no clue about what went on for anybody else for the last 2 weeks, because you show up on the third week. So the continuity is really important, because people really find a place. One of the most important elements of Evolve is that we tell the men that whatever they say in the group stays in the group. It does not, confidentiality is absolutely the paramount item for the safety of the group and for the safety of the individuals in the group. We don't talk to any other agencies. We don't report to any other agencies other than to say someone was there and they participated. If they don't participate, then they eventually will be asked to leave the group. So yes, you can continue, but I think most of the men, because things have changed a lot. We used to do only in-person groups, and then when COVID hit, we had to stop. So that's how the virtual group became a part of Evolve. But there is, honestly, the in-person group is more intimate. It's more conducive to people being vulnerable. But the virtual groups also, after a while, open up. It takes a while. Generally, things don't happen in the first couple of weeks. It takes a few weeks for people to learn to trust each other. And that learning to trust is a big part of why people feel they can stay and evolve. They don't drop out. I mean, even if they could drop out, they really find that the group offers them something they don't have in their lives, which is a place to be heard, a place to be listened to, without necessarily a judgment that, obviously we all make judgments about violence is not okay. Nobody is saying violence is okay, never. But it's a place where people can actually say, I did that. I'm ashamed of it. I wish I could take it back. And one of the things that we have learned over the years is that alcohol is almost at least 75% of the time where there's domestic violence, alcohol is involved, because alcohol unleashes inhibitions, and when you're an angry person that has enabled to keep it together and not express it, or not express it violently, a couple of drinks, and then the inhibitions go away, and people get violent, way beyond. They would often say, that's not who I am. And we would say, that is who you are, particularly when you have 2 or 3 drinks in you. So yeah, guys often will say, that's not who I am. But we are absolutely, adamantly not allowing that to say, that's who you were. You can't deny that. And then, once people are able to feel like they can say what they've done, they can then talk about how it felt to do that, how it felt afterwards, and wish they could take it back and learn how to deal with feelings. Because in the world we're in today, people are angry. There are a lot of people who are angry, and understandably angry. It's a very difficult world. And so when you have no place to process the anger, no way to express the anger, or at least that you don't know how to express the anger, violence becomes, it's easy to be angry and violent. It just comes right out. You don't have to you don't think about it. You just mostly act. You feel something, you act out. And one of the things we have a list of things that we try, a list of strategies to help people deal with, well, what do you do when you're angry? What do I do? So we have a list of things to help them process, like, why are you angry? Just to even sit with your anger for a while and say, I'm angry. I'm not going to do anything but I'm angry. I need to be able to talk about it. Sometimes you need to get up and walk away. That's a really good strategy when you're feeling like you're ready to hurt somebody, is the first thing, stop, leave the room, go somewhere, chill out for a bit, and then maybe come back and say, I can't talk about this right now. Maybe we can have a conversation about it, why I'm angry. And it doesn't mean that the anger isn't real, or even sometimes the anger can be justified. It's what you do with the anger that's the problem. I don't think anybody honestly can say they're never angry. There's so much to be angry about in this world. So we try to help people learn. Yes, so anger management is a component, but it's not the essence of the group. It's about learning to feel your feelings and be able to talk about them, and especially when children are involved. And the children are the most painful recipients of the results of domestic violence. It's painful to listen to some of the stories. And then when guys do something that's terrible and they get an order of protection, which is one of the ways the courts have for saying to someone, you cannot contact that person, they have to find a place to have to deal with their anger, even at themselves. So we provide that format for them, and it feels really good to be a part of that process.
I'm getting the feeling that these groups have a beginning and an end.
Yes, I mean, they start, as we mentioned, it's 33 sessions. It's a format of a group where there's 2 facilitators, 1 man and 1 woman. Yes, they maybe not many, but we have clients that are very resistant at the beginning. They say that they don't have any domestic violence or any anger issues and why they were sent here, and they just want to, complete because of parole or probation. But then they finish the 33 sessions and they do another 33. And not long ago, as an example, I had somebody that said that to me and said, no, I really, it was very, very resistant. And when this person completed, said to me, I just started to learn on how to process certain things. So this person again is completing another 33 sessions.
So how often do you start a new program?
It's an ongoing. There is no like a certain day or month. We are ongoing, taking clients all the time. It's they can join anytime.
Okay, so a person may be new and have 33 sessions, but they can get into a program that may have been running for years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how. So
well, not necessarily for years, but the groups always take on new people. So you have generally a core group, and then new people come in, and they become part of the group. It takes a couple of weeks for them to feel comfortable, and then people graduate, and then new people come in. So it's always a changing situation, which again, the name of the group is Evolve. You know, it's the essence is about change. So the mix of people change, and sometimes it's really cohesive, and sometimes it's like, oh my God, this is not working. People not talking, and so it's always interesting because you never know what's going to happen in the group, and who's going to come in with something like, oh my God. And then that leads to other people talking about, oh my God, that happened to me. I thought I was the only person that happened to. And there is a bonding that takes place as men learn it's safe to talk. It's safe to express fear. It's safe to express anger. It's safe to express pain. And men have traditionally have a hard time doing that. Men are taught to be stark. And I'm fine, no problem. It's I don't need any help. because that's the way they grew up, so this is a process for people to find new ways of learning to live in the world.
Is Evolve primarily a family program?
Yes, it's a Family of Woodstock program.
Has anybody thought about going out beyond family?
There's other counties, other agencies that offer domestic violence intervention around the country, and it's other counties that also provide it's batterers intervention programs.
Dutchess County has a program for men
Dutchess
over.
County, yeah.
How do these programs do? I guess the question I'm trying to find out is, when you have a person who comes back from war, they've signed up for the military, they've done their years, maybe they've done their 8 years, maybe they've done 30, whatever, 20, 22, whatever. Do they, are their experiences the same as those who have not been in the military?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know, because we don't generally get veterans as such. There are programs for veterans, probably not nearly enough, given the trauma that people go to war experience. But our program isn't really designed for that. It's basically a county program run by family and funded in part by United Way, part by the county. And so it's really for Ulster County residents. As I said, we have, as a result of COVID, when we had to really basically shut down, the virtual groups were born. So that enables people who live down south of Ellenville, right on the southern part of the county, who really don't have a place to go, to have a group that they can work with and work with their issues. So that's sort of...
How do women fit into this?
Well, that is very interesting. I mean, Martin has a lot of experience in the women's group, but the dynamic is completely different. I've been facilitating both, not as much as Martin, but for women, the dynamic is different. We maybe open up a little bit more. In general, they are the ones who care for the children, so there's a lot of stress about that, a lot of parenting. That's one of the main topics in many of the women's group. There's also a lot of resistance, and as I said, there's also that fine line of being the perpetrator as also the survivor or the victim in the situation. So it's very interesting with the women's group, but it's I really enjoy doing women's group. I myself learn a lot from both, but maybe Martin wants to share something.
Yeah, I mean, the women's group came about in the early 2000s, and the difference between the women's group for me, when I was doing both, was that the men were about power and control for the most part, and the women were mostly, when they were sent to the group because of domestic violence, it was mostly a reactive thing rather than power and control. So if a woman was hurt by her partner, boyfriend, whatever, husband, father, she might react in a physical way. We had a situation where someone was cheated on, and it went on for a long time, and she wound up taking a baseball bat and knocking out every window in the guy's car, headlights and all, and she wound up in the group. And it was a good place for her, because she wasn't normally a violent person, but she got triggered. So that's one of the other thing is you learn what triggers you. Learning to know what are the things that tend to set you off, that are most upsetting to you, is really helpful. And people will talk about that. But again, with the women, women, I would say most of the time was in reaction to the abuse that they were feeling in the relationship. That in themselves, I'm not trying to say that women are not violent or can't be violent. They can, obviously. But my experience doing it for about 15 years was that it was mostly in response to being wounded, to being physically hurt, to being mentally abused by their boyfriends or, in some cases, their parents, their father. And and women were much easier in terms of getting them to really talk about it. Women generally have been socialized to be able to talk about what they feel, whereas men have been socialized not to talk about it. It's a sign of weakness to talk about your problems, to admit you have problems. You know, most guys will say, I'm fine. You know, it's not like, it's not easy for men to be vulnerable. So we got a letter from a current client in one of my groups, and he said, "This is the first place that I've been able to talk and feel listened to. I don't have anybody in my life that really will listen to me." And I think that that's a very common thing, not just for the people in this group. I think that's a common thing for people in general, whether they're in an involved group or not, that people don't. And think about Family of Woodstock. One of the basic things that family does is we listen to people. We have a hotline that's 24/7. People call up to be heard because they're alone, because they're afraid, because they're suicidal, and they have a place. And we tell all the men in the groups and the women as well. If you have a problem at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can call Family of Woodstock 24/7. And it's an amazing, amazing resource in Ulster County. And we used to get a lot of calls from out of state. But now they have warm lines in other states, and so we're not getting, because it's, when you're alone during night shift, as Thurman, that's how I met you, you do a night shift at Family, so you wind up speaking to people who call up. So I think maybe I should interview you about what it's like to do night shift at Family.
Well, of course, it's an interesting thing, but to me, the woman is a more complex, because, as you said, she starts out reacting to having received some kind of an assault in some form, whereas something has to set the men off.
Well, there's a lot of, I don't know if this is on the direction of your question, but without excusing any behavior, and we don't really agree with any type of violence, but there's a lot of trauma in the people that we get, and so that's where many of these things come from, where our clients, our participants, since they were young, that's how they learn and how to react and that was the way they communicate with violence, with verbal abuse, with shutting doors and scaring people, taking guns, and things that happen, and that's the space where we explore on how there's other strategies, how there's other alternatives on solve conflict. And like Martin mentioned before, it's okay to be angry. It's just a way you react to your anger. Also, I wanted to share one of my experiences also as a facilitator, the topic of parenting. So many of our clients are fathers or mothers, parents, And it's powerful to understand that our behaviors are really modeling our children, and that's what they are learning. So it's very important for them to express themselves, to see what, where all these things came from, but also to understand that whatever they're doing, the kids are watching. So in my group, as again in the Spanish group, that is something that maybe has been helpful for us to explore and to talk. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's important. You have brought up a really important point, and whatever happens, the children see it. And people, I believe, do not. I never heard anybody talk about what your 3-month-old observes or what your 6-month-old observes. They see it all, and they may not have the language, but they definitely are processing what they are observing. And so by the time they're a year old, these little brains have absorbed so much.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. We've had many discussions in a variety of groups around the issue of spanking. We live, in my view, we live in a violent society. All you have to do is read the paper and you know what a violent society we live in. So it's the thought that kids are going to be hit. For me, and I think from a lot of what I've read, spanking a child, hitting a child to discipline them, in my eyes, is the first step of domestic violence. Because you're telling that child, you're going to control their behavior because you're bigger and stronger. And the child learns that's what the
Very
reality is.
quickly.
Absolutely. And even though that there is, spanking is allowed, and for me, I try to say spanking should be an absolutely last resort if anything. Because when you spank, it means you've exhausted all the other possibilities of reasoning, working with your child, giving them a timeout, taking away their phone, or even with a 6-year-old, and when you resort to hitting, that's your inability to control your feelings that the child is creating in you. And so this is another place of talking about that in the group, about saying, so what do you think a child feels when they get hit? Well, then some guys will say, well, then they learn not to do that. And sort of like, what a model that is. And it plays out in their relationships often with their wives and their girlfriends. Well, if I exercise power and control, she'll learn not to do that. So if I come home after working and I find dishes in the sink, that's not acceptable. So, but those are the kind of things that become triggers on the other side for the woman who gets hit or psychologically damaged by remarks made, you're a this, you're a that, or whatever. And then they wind up feeling resentful and angry, and then at the right moment or the wrong moment, they react and do something destructive because they haven't had a place to process their feelings ahead of that.
I think you've really hit on something. One of the things that I have observed through my miles in life is that people somehow growing up did not learn to process. We're not given an opportunity to process. We're not whatever. And so then you have an adult who has not learned to process. And also you have an adult who has never learned to make a decision. So often when people call in and when people don't know how to make decisions, after a while, you just start hitting. Does that make any sense?
Well, I think it leaves you very, very frustrated that you're unable to really have control of your life. Someone else has the control of your life, and that brings up resentment. Nobody likes to be controlled. It's not who we are as human beings. So, yeah, to allow people, you know, the current group that I'm running is very powerful, and the group has really come together. And one of the people said, you know, I did a really bad thing to my wife. I did hit her, and I went to jail. And my kids didn't want my wife to allow me to come back in the house after I got out of jail. But my wife decided that she wanted to give me another chance because of the other parts of our relationship. And it actually, what happened was, because of COVID, I lost my job. I wound up spending all my time at home, and there was no space for us to have space. And so it became very oppressive. And then I acted out and went to jail. But when I came back, I had learned in jail that my needs for my wife to forgive me was not okay. I need to allow her to be angry with me. Even though I apologized as much as I could, she didn't trust me. I had done something that I had put my hands on her and pushed her, and she didn't feel safe with me. So it took me, he's been in the group now 8 months, and I can tell you, he's a different person than when he started. And it's really amazing just to be a part of that process.
Did he come there willingly, or did he come because he was told to?
He was told to. It was part of his probation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that is a huge statement also. If it's part of your probation that you go through this program, even if you didn't ask for this program, you can benefit from it.
Yeah.
Most of the people don't volunteer. Most of the people are here because the judge sent them, or because probation, they got sent to jail, and as part of their release from probation, they have to do the Evolve course. So most of it is not voluntary. It becomes voluntary possibly afterwards, or someone will go to court, and in order to make a statement to the judge that they're trying to change their behavior, they say, I've already enrolled in Evolve. So it looks good for them. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because they're at least recognizing that they need some help. So they come, and then they complete the course. Most people start and finish. Very few people drop out. Wouldn't you say that's true, Andrea?
Yes. Last year, for example, we had a good amount of people that completed, graduated from the program. So it's good to see that people, feel that this is a safe place to, like you mentioned, to process things, that to examine their behaviors, and hopefully to change those behaviors. So overall, we have a good amount of people completing. Some people that return as volunteers, and what we're trying to do here is to really offer that safe space for these men that have been violent, and to stop that.
And what about the women? They need a safe space.
Yes, also for them. Yeah. When I say men, I'm sorry, forget that we also have our women's group, but for many of the cases, like you mentioned, it's because of their reaction. And of course, there's a safe space for them as well. And we sometimes become very close to them. We offer other services at family when we can connect them with case management that is also very powerful, where we can do a little bit extra and help them with something that maybe we could, but we can't.
So what you just said is that Evolve is a program that is integrated in with other community activities. In other words, if a person goes to the Evolve program with family, they may have a case manager, they may do other things, not just Evolve.
It can happen. It can happen. If somebody is in need of some type of assistance and they express that during the session, during the intake, we can definitely look into connect. I mean, that's not our main goal to assist in other areas of their lives. It's really we just concentrate in the domestic violence. But at the end, a lot of people is because of having a stress of paying a bill. I'm not trying to reduce the domestic violence to just that, but if we can at least minimize some of the stressors by helping with maybe, applying for housing or looking into things, connecting them with case management within family, we can do that. But as I said, it's not the intention of the program, right? It's just to see, and if we could provide a little bit of information to them, of course we will do it.
So Evolve is a standalone program of its own,
Yes.
although it can fit in with other things. How important, not important, I don't know the word, how does homelessness fit into this picture?
I don't think in my groups, I have not had a lot of men that have been homeless. But sometimes when they're forced to leave the house because of behavior that's absolutely unacceptable, which happens for a while, they're in a difficult space because either they have child support or they have to pay the rent for the house. I'm not sure exactly. What I'm trying to say is that I have not really had specific issues where someone was in the group and was homeless and we had to help deal with the homelessness. It's not something that I have had that experience with, so I really can't comment on that.
You cannot.
No.
One of the things that has struck me every time I talk on the telephone at family to a person who is seeking shelter, I realize that they are under such stress, and the control that they must exhibit at all times, because no matter what they hear from family or DSS or the motel or whatever, they are not allowed to cry or yell. All they can do is say, well, thank you very much. I don't know who teaches that to them, but I know that that's the behavior. And I wonder, how is this going to play out 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? You cannot go through the stress that they are going through week after week after week. Something is going to give.
Well, that's true, absolutely true, and also and our part in this, because the guys will come into the group at night, because most of the groups are at night, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5:30, and they'll have been to court, or they'll have been to DSS, and they'll be raging because they were denied visitation.
Uh-huh.
And this is a place for them to vent all that.
Yes.
Think of it, if it were just that, to give people a chance to come to a place where they can say whatever they feel without having to worry about it
Right.
or have a consequence about it, other than to be vulnerable and sometimes just cry about how painful it is. I haven't seen my 3-year-old in a year and a half. True, you were responsible for that, for what you did, but nevertheless, it's painful for someone to not spend the last year with his 3-year-old. And there's got to be a place for that person to work through those feelings so they don't do something over and above it and exacerbate the situation.
Right.
And if it were just that, it would be enough, truthfully.
Yes.
Because people are burdened, and I'm not excusing any of it. People have done terrible things. But after they've done that, they have to go on living, and they have to go on being parents, and they have to go on being parents who can't see their kids.
Oh my gosh, did you guys see that? Now, when we just got to the heart of the matter, it took us an hour. We got to the heart of the matter, and Ellen says,
Give me 5.
give me 5. So, what do we have for the final 5?
Well, I don't know what to say. Just that if somebody feels that they want to reach out to us, if they know somebody that maybe will benefit from this program, because domestic violence is something that sometimes it's in the family and nobody wants to say anything. It's a problem. So you are more than welcome to give me a call at Family of Woodstock.
Can you tell a telephone number or maybe an email or something?
Sure. The easiest way is the phone number, which is 845-331-7080, and they can just ask for me or for the Evolve program, and they will be transferred to me directly.
Well, and if you're in a family building, the way I found out about Evolve was a flyer that fell off the wall. It was on the floor, and I picked it up, and it was like, wow, what is this? So, and what kind of 5 minutes do you have?
Well, I guess I would just say how fortunate I have been to be able to be part of this organization, Evolve and Family of Woodstock, for a long time. And it's a privilege to work with people who, even though they come there saying, I don't have a problem, they wind up, for the most part, saying, I have a problem, and I need to fix it, I need to work on it, I need to find better ways to communicate my feelings, to talk to my children, to talk to my wife or girlfriend. So it's very satisfying, and I'm happy I'm able to do it.
Yes, family does offer an awful lot, and you guys have done a wonderful job this evening. And I'm hoping that at some point you can return. And in the meantime, can we say thank you very much for Ellen? Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Say good night.
Good night, Ellen.
Good night, Ellen.
Wait.
Good night, audience. Good night, world.